Today we're going to be talking about engineering process and what that's about and how that relates to the product development lifecycle. So going to the next slide, where are we now? So previously we were talking about research and planning, and we talked about design. Now we're going to be talking about implement and test and go into detail on what that's about. Before I go into how do engineers contribute to product development, engineers are also involved in other parts of the life cycle, but for the most part, they're involved in the implement and test phase. If engineers are involved in earlier stages of the product development process, they can have a big impact on the rest of the process. When coming up with PRDs, if tech leads are involved in the process, tech PRDs are potentially simpler to understand and implement. When coming up with design, mockups, and comprehensives, engineers can help to ensure that design is as simple to implement as possible while ensuring delivery of business value. In some companies, such as Facebook, engineers are the ones who decide whether or not the product will be built, while the PMs are the ones to pitch the ideas to them. They are the ones to build out your product idea and vision and bring it to the fruition. While developing the product, they are the ones who will be iterating over the prototypes and MVPs to build the final product. Engineers are the ones to support the product after the product has been launched. They are the ones to fix bugs and other issues as they come up after being launched. They're the ones who will also test to ensure good quality code is being released. In order to help improve the product and iterate, engineers will be the ones to add functionality for error reporting, analytics, and data collection, etc. Going into development ideologies. So what are software development ideologies? They are methods of building and developing software. These may be referred to software design patterns. Each type of development methodology serves a specific purpose, and thus each one is good for specific situations. These methodologies being used can vary from company to company. These can also vary based on the type of product being developed. Each method has drawbacks and strengths. There are several methodologies, but the most common are the waterfall and agile. An important notice here is that there are also methods of developing a product so far. The version of the product development lifecycle that was taught in this course is the basic one. However, product development lifecycle may look different depending on which software development methodology is chosen. Okay, now going into what the waterfall ideology is, and that basically is a development strategy that involves building the whole product out at once. This emphasizes a progression of steps, which we will elaborate on in the next slide. Waterfall gets its name from the progression of steps that are much like cascading steps down a incremental waterfall. At the end of the process, products must be fully complete and finished. Better for the products that cannot have any issues when released, such as business-to-business products or enterprise software. So waterfall is mainly used for business-to-business products and enterprise software. I still think it's not a very good method, but it can be used at a low risk for these products. So going into the steps of the waterfall process, we're going to be talking about requirements, design, development, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So requirements, that's basically during the initial phase. The potential requirements of the application are analyzed and written down in a specific documentation or a specification documentation that serves as the basis of all future development. The result is typically a requirements document that defines what the application should do, but not how it should do it. Next step is analysis. This is the second stage. The system is analyzed in order to properly generate the models and business logic that will be used in the application. Next is design. The design phase details any requirements such as interface, data process, and physical requirements needed to implement the project. These requirements are defined in a design specification document. Next is coding or development. Source code is developed based on the requirements. The system is commonly built and tested in small units. Units are integrated, and then the entire product moves to the testing phase. So in the testing phase, the new product or feature is fully tested to make sure it meets the specific requirements. Any issues or bugs are documented and reported to the development team so they can be fixed. And then we're going into operations. And then so finally, the application is ready for deployment to a live environment. The operations stage entails not just the deployment of the application, but also the support and maintenance that may be required to keep it functional and up to date. So next slide, we're going to talk about some pros and cons. So advantages of waterfall. So one of the advantages is that it adapts to dynamic systems. While not necessarily specific to the waterfall method only, using a waterfall method does allow the project as a whole to maintain a more detailed, robust scope and design structure due to all the upfront planning and documentation stages. This is particularly well suited to large teams that may see members come and go throughout the life cycle of the project, allowing the burden of the design to be placed on the core documentation and less on any individual team member. It ensures structured organization. Some might argue that this is a burden rather than a benefit. The fact remains is that the waterfall method forces the project and even the organization building the project to be disciplined in its design and structure. Most sizable projects will, by necessity, include detailed procedures to maintain every aspect of the project from design and development to testing and implementation. It allows for design changes early on the process. While this can be difficult to make design changes later in the process, the waterfall approach lends itself well to alternatives early in the life cycle. This can be great when fleshing out specification documents in the first couple stages with the development team and clients, as alternations can be made immediately with minimal effort since no coding or implementation has actually taken place. It's also well suited for tracking development process with milestones. Due to the inherent linear structure of a waterfall project, such applications are always well suited for organizations or teams that work well under a milestone and date-focused projects with clear and concrete and well understood stages that everyone on the team can understand and prepare for. It is relatively simple to develop a timeline for the entire process and assign particular markers and milestones for each stage and even completion. This isn't to suggest like software development isn't often rife with delays, since it is, but waterfall is benefiting the kind of project that needs deadlines. Disadvantages. So some of the disadvantages are rigid design requirements. When a test in stage 5 reveals a fundamental flaw in the design of the system, it not only requires a dramatic leap backward in stages of the process, but in some cases can often lead to devastating realization regarding the entire system. While most experienced teams and developers would rightfully argue that such revelations shouldn't occur if the system was properly designed in the first place, not every possibility can be accounted for, especially when stages are so often delayed until the end of the process. Also, it's due to the fact steps are taken in progression of each other. There is no room for user feedback in the middle of the process. Also, because testing occurs late in the process, bugs and other issues are only discovered later when the product is built out already. Now going into what everybody uses today, that's the agile development process. So that is a set of frameworks and practices based off the manifesto for agile software development. Set of conventions determined and agreed upon by each team. Within the process, there's different teams within a company that can have different conventions. The process focuses on rapid and dynamic software product delivery. It's used for products that require relatively quick support and iterations. And so these are some of the general principles of an agile. Basically satisfy the client and continually develop software. Changing requirements are embraced for clients' competitive advantage. Concentrate on delivering working software frequently. Developers and business people must work together throughout the entire project. Projects must be based on people who are motivated. Give them proper environment and support they need. Face-to-face communication is the best way to transfer information to and from a team. Working software is primarily a measure of progress. Agile processes will promote development that is sustainable. Sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain an indefinite, constant pace. Constant attention to technical excellence and good design will enhance agility. Simplicity is considered to be the art of maximizing the work that is not done and is essential. Self-organized teams usually create the best designs. At regular intervals, the team will reflect on how to become more effective and will tune and adjust the behavior accordingly. And so I'm going to go into the Scrum methodologies. This is the subset of Agile methodologies. And then I'll go into elements of Scrum. So there's a Scrum team, and the team consists of the product owner, the Scrum master, and development team. There's also the Scrum ceremonies, which is basically like sprints, sprint planning, sprint daily stand-up, sprint review, and retrospective. The sprint artifacts are the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and increment. And just going into pros and cons, and then that's basically, That's basically pros and cons would be offers a light framework for assisting teams, ensures that value is optimized throughout the development process, easily adapts to changing requirements, helps companies build the right product as efficiently as possible. Some of the cons, things that are wrong with this process, is that it's developer-centric rather than user-centric. Agile focuses on processes for getting requirements and developing code and does not focus on product design. Agile methodologies can also be inefficient in large organizations and certain type of projects. So going into how to work better with engineers as a PM. So these are several ways that you can work better with engineers. Sharing leadership and credit. So like talking to the engineer, leading them and giving them credit for their work. Include engineers in product design decisions. And so that's going to happen heavily depending on where you work. And so if you're working in like technology, most likely you will be including engineers in your product decisions. Clarify roles and enforce them with mutual respect. So clarifying roles within your team and making sure that these are the people doing the certain work that they're supposed to do. Clear away inefficiency and help your teammates succeed. So I guess that would be micromanaging. So having trust in your team and putting having less micromanaging within your processes will definitely benefit your team and efficiency. And here we have any questions for this slide. We're not fully done. I think we have one more slide to go. I can go ahead and go over those slides, and then we can go for questions. So just going over launching your product. So where are we now? So before we were in the implement and test. Now we're going to be talking about release. So things to do for your product launch. So you create a launch checklist, communicate product and launch plans to your several different teams that you're working with. Make sure stakeholders and business partners are okay with the state of the product. Communicate product launch to your customers. So going over the launch checklist. Why is this important? It's important to have, as one can make sure that everything that needs to be done gets done. Helps with execution as release criteria for the product is laid out. Teams will know what is required in order for the product to be considered complete, and product managers can keep track of progress of product development, and also organizing information from other teams of business. So going into the elements of launch checklist, the list for each team you are working with. So example would be like sales department, clarify sales strategies for business to consumer and business to business if applicable. Cover all FAQs and responses. Know all partnerships that will be entering or will be centered around the launch. List of requirements for product readiness. So list of features to be included if releasing new product. A QA checklist to ensure product is fully tested. A UX design consistency to-do list, which is basically UX reviews. List of requirements for internal systems. So that's going to be billing, ensure system for collecting bills or generating revenue from customers is in place. Infrastructure, so ensure analytics and feedback systems are ready. And then finance, ensure revenue tracking and analytics are ready. Details of launching product is basically date of launch, medium of launch, and contingency of launch, plan for launch. And going into communication of launch, so internal communication is meeting with all teams involved and making sure everyone is on the same page and is fully invested in your product idea. So you're sharing the product roadmap with different teams, explain why product is being built and why it's trying to be achieved. Communicate the KPIs. So these are key performance indicators, key product indicators and success metrics. Communicate launch checklist for each team and set timeline for checklist to be completed by. Ensure all teams are satisfied with the current state of product, UX, other PMs or engineers. Meet with stakeholders and business partners. So have product showcase and gather feedback and suggestions. Ensure that maximum business value is being delivered and sufficient justification for product idea. Get approval on current state of product and communicate that respective teams are okay with it. Communicate KPIs and success metric for product. Now going into the next slide. Communication of launch to customer. So determine and ensure you know who target audience and customer is. Working with marketing teams to communicate release of product feature to target audience. Figure out what channels to promote your product on. Figure out what social media campaign will look like. Determine content of marketing campaign. Communicate to industry expert about release. Have press briefings, media briefings to announce launch. Okay, so now going over like what is a product versus feature launches. So product is finding market fit, getting new or more customers, increase revenue, and boost company reputation. Feature is to decrease churn rate, improve customer loyalty, and boost retention, boost brand reputation, and then both of them basically increase revenue, increase customer base, and also boost company reputation. Ensure support and team and contingency plans are in place. That's very important. And then I'll go over any questions that I went over for these 2 slides. Just put them in the chat and I'll go ahead and answer as much as I can. And then I think after these questions, I will be going over our second project, or actually, yeah, our second project, and that's going to be related to MVPs and PRDs. So before I do that, I'll go ahead and take any questions. That's a good question. So what exactly do you mean by the contingency plan of the release? So just going back to those slides. 1 second. Might do, but basically what it means is that it's a plan designed to take possible future events or circumstances into account. And so for like anything that goes wrong with the product, or like you end up going in a different direction, those are called contingency plans. And these are not just plans for what might be an alternative problem, but also what you expect. So these are like expectations that you might have for the product, and these are the plans that you have just in case for a future event or a future product launch or future product release, etc. And so those are called contingency plans, and you should have them as you prepare to launch a product. So anybody else? And there's just a few people on the call, so if you guys have any more questions, if not, I can go ahead and just go into the project. Okay, looks like there's no more questions. I know this was a lot, but I'm going to be posting all this in Slack. I know this it's a lot of information, but just read through the notes, the slide decks, just to get a better understanding. So, going into the MVP design project. So this is just the second project. This is going to look really good on your resume if you just go through this project. Basically, what you'll be doing is you'll be creating an MVP, like it says. So make sure you state what your product idea is, explain how and why you decided to design your MVP the way you did. Make sure you outline exactly what your MVP consists of and how it provides the maximum amount of value with minimum effort. Keep in mind the MVP does not have to have the same functionality as the final product. It can be, you can mock it, or it can be a mock-up. You can create this MVP using some of the several tools I'm showing you here: Figma, Envision, Sketch, Abstract, or UXPin. Also, regarding this project, there should be two main things that you should have. It's going to be a PRD and a design sketch. So what I just talked about is just a design sketch, but you also want to have a product requirement document, which is a PRD, um, and that's going to be um, this over here. And so you're going to write out your product requirement document, and that's going to talk about your objectives, release, different features, and analytics. You can be as simple as possible. This can be any product or any existing product. It is advised that being creative and creating something new. If you're not able to do that, definitely find a product that's already in market and make a product requirements document. It's definitely much easier to research, do your research. And this shouldn't be that hard. I know it looks like a lot, but try to keep it simple as possible, and also try to keep it detailed. Just minimal details. And then going into the MVP, that doesn't have to be complex. There's a lot of people in the past who've created something just out of Figma. This can just be like a couple sketches here and there. And the sketches might have just several different funnels. Like for example, like somebody made an app and they just had like 4 or 5 screens, and so you can do that using these tools below. If you guys have any questions on the project, I'll be posting all this in Slack, but if you guys have any questions, just let me know right now, or you guys can let me know in the Slack channel. Okay, that's a good question. Does this project should be done individually as well? So I get you're right. We're actually going to set up some groups, and so we're going to create some groups within the Slack channel. So we're going to make up a couple groups here. If you do have if there are certain individuals that you would like in your group, just message me. But so far, we're going to randomize the groups, and then from there, you would work on this project. Anybody else? Any more questions? Yeah, there are 2 assignments. This is basically it. So the first one I think I posted in the week 2 channel. This will be posted in the week 3 channel. These are both due, I think, by the end of this program. So I would say week 4. I do recommend, trying to finish the first assignment by the end of week 3. So before we reach, the start of week 4. So you still have time going into the next week. So I think that's basically it for the timeline. Try to do your best finishing the first project next week. And then the second project would be due at the end of week 4. Okay. I think that's all I have. If you guys have any more questions, um, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, I can go ahead and end this call. Okay, yeah. Thank you guys. You guys are free to go. I'm gonna go ahead and end this call. And then I'll send out the recording and the files and required documents.